In this video, we are going to talk about object-oriented programming and objects in PowerShell. Before we start, I will ask for some favors. Please give a like to this video to help me share it with a larger audience on YouTube and help others to learn PowerShell. Thank you in advance. To understand object-oriented programming, it's better to start from life examples. Let's take programming aside and think together about what an object is. For example, your table is an object. Your keyboard and mouse are objects. A cup of coffee or tea, which you drink in the morning, is an object. Each object has its own properties, like type, size, weight, and color. In the case of a cup, it even has properties about how full it is and by what. Objects can contain other objects in them and even can interact with each other. The same happens in programming and especially in PowerShell. Let's try to write our first object in ISE. I want you to select any object in your room and try to describe it as, "I do it with this cup." Feel free to pause the video for this. In our world exist different templates of objects, like standard for cups, standard for tables, and other objects. This standard in programming is called class. With classes in programming, it is possible to create objects of a specific type. Any object that is made without a class is, without this particular standard, called a custom object. We will learn classes in the distant future. For now, you just need to remember this concept. So, to make a PowerShell custom object, we are starting from the creation of a hash table. As you remember, we declare hash tables this way. Now, when we have a hash table where each property is written as a key and value, we can make casting to make it be a PowerShell custom object by typing PSCustomObject type. This is how you usually create a PowerShell custom object with properties. Now we place our custom object into a variable of cup of coffee. As you can see now, we have a variable cup of coffee that has its own properties, and each property has its value. Do you see the current output? This type of output is called a list formatted view, like you see the object's properties in the list. Sometimes the output looks different as a table. Now at this point, it is very important to learn to read PowerShell console output properly. But for this, I'll show you another thing that we're going to talk about it even more: the pipeline. A pipeline is a method of passing an object or objects to another commandlet, like you getting your objects and then passing them to another calculation or process, like on a conveyor belt. The object can pass many operations and you will get your final output as you need it at the end. A simple example, our cup. I'm passing this object through the pipeline to the next commandlet of format table. Now you see the same object but displayed differently as a table. Let's make another array, but with more cups. Now I'm sending those custom objects into a pipeline to format table, and we see them in a table. Each column represents the property of an object. Or another example is if we want to add another property to an object, we can send it to a commandlet add member, which allows us to add a new property to an object. Let's add our cup property of weight. We're going to talk about the pipeline even more, but later. For now, let's take our cups example aside and see a more real example from an operating system. I'm executing a command-let get process that provides us with a list of processes. We place all this output into a variable. So now all processes, all objects, are stored in a variable. This is an array of objects. The output of this variable is an array of objects. Each line of the output represents an object from our array. Each column is a property and each value on the line is a value for its property. For now, you see this output as a table, but of course, each process has a lot more properties which we actually don't see in this view. You actually see something like default information. And this is exactly the case when I can use a pipeline to format the output in a different view. When the output is quite big, maybe we don't need so much information. Let's, for example, do all of this, but for a single process just to see the amount of the information. One very useful command is actually getMember. This commandlet shows you all the properties of each object, and as you can see, the object has not only properties. There are a few types of things, but the most important thing is that you need to know its properties and methods. Methods are like actions that your object can do. Think of a cup. We have an option like adding to each a liquid, or we can drink from it. Or maybe after some time, the state of the liquid will change from hot to warm, or even cold. All of these are methods. When you create a custom object in PowerShell, it's about 99% that you don't need methods for them. More than that, every item in PowerShell is an object, including numbers, strings, and arrays. They have their own methods and properties. For example, an array has the property of count, and a string has the property of length. You can figure all of this out with a getMember. And as always, don't forget to practice everything that we are learning in those videos, and don't forget to support us by likes. Subscribe for new videos and don't hesitate to ask questions on our Telegram channel.